Evil Pixel.
Movie-inspired video games have always been a popular move for the video game industry. It's only right that when a popular movie gets released, a game is also made to cash in on some of that hype. Sometimes. And such is the case for the game we'll be discussing today. Falling more into the obscure category of both movies and video games, we're going to be discussing the unreleased Sega Genesis game, It Came From the Desert. It Came From the Desert is a computer game released in 1989 by Cinemaware for the Amiga. Cinemaware was founded in 1985. Their first title was Defender of the Crown, which sported graphics that were considered groundbreaking for the time of its release. The founders, Bob and Phyllis Jacob, were hardcore movie fans, and many of their games released were inspired by the classic movie genre. Now, even though this game was ported on other computer consoles, it was originally made for the Amiga, and the gameplay centers on the player choosing what they want to do by selecting an option on the multiple choice screens that pop up. This game was actually based on the 1950s films called Them, directed by Gordon Douglas. Now, the plot of the movie was very strange to say the least. A nest of mutated ants is discovered in New Mexico along with a queen and quickly become a threat on a national level. And the game is honestly much of the same. It kinda reminds me of Zombies Ate My Neighbors, the way you have to maneuver through stages in a non-stop horde of enemies, all while attempting to collect items and find new ways to proceed through the stage. The plot of the game puts players in control of Dr. Greg Bradley, who comes to a remote lizard breath California. He finds the place to be infested with mutant ants, and fearing that they would breed and become even more threatening, he devises a plan to warn the rest of the world of the impending threat. Now, this game actually had an in-game real-time clock that ran as you were performing various errands. The player has a fixed in-game time of 15 days to find the ant colony and kill the queen before it's too late. Now, please keep in mind that this game was released on other platforms. Now, this unreleased Sega Genesis / Mega Drive version was going to be released in 1990. This version of the game was different from the other versions due to the fact that it was more action-oriented. Once again, it consisted of the overhead shooter with the main protagonist running around on foot and being able to walk in all directions. Now, one of the interesting aspects of this version was the fact that it allowed you to create more power-ups that were made possible by gathering machinery parts and combining them in different forms. This was very cool for the time. Now, even though this game may have looked good for the time and the gameplay is fluent, it doesn't take away from the fact that this game is extremely difficult. And you get to experience the difficulty from the very start of the game. While you do have a health bar, the amount of damage that you take in this game is very inconsistent. And later on in the game, the amount of health power-ups that you receive is very scarce. And on top of that, there is no post-hit invincibility like most games. So you can die from one quick combo of ants trampling you. The game also has a good amount of problem solving, which is good. The only issue here is that these puzzles can easily cause a quick death if you don't know what you're doing, which would require trial and error. Now, all that is fine and good, but once again, the issue is that this game doesn't have infinite lives or continues, so you can't really afford to lose a life on trying to figure out a level, especially if you're far along into the game. Now, all of this could have been amended if they would have just added infinite lives, or a large amount of lives, or an easy way to gain more lives. The rumored reason for this game's cancellation was due to the fact that Cinemaware lacked the talents to be able to complete the game with all the features they wanted the game to have, on the time frame they were given. However, this was false, but it was the case for their game titled SDI. The reason for It Came From the Desert's cancellation was probably due to the fact that Cinemaware went bankrupt by 1991. Interestingly enough, since this game was never physically released, the ROM was distributed by Cinemaware themselves through their website. Now, even though the game had similar camera angles, the Genesis version did not reuse any of the graphical elements created for use in the computer-based versions. Now, as of the recording of this video, Cinemaware started taking pre-orders for a retro package limited edition physical cartridge of the game for the Sega Genesis. So head to their site if you're interested in purchasing it. Now, an interesting interview with the main programmer of this project can be read at Sega 16's website. Here's an interview by Ross Silliphant with Bob Jacob from Cinemaware. Ross Silliphant asked, "What happened to the Genesis version of It Came From the Desert? I believe it was a very different game in terms of plot and gameplay, being more akin to an overhead shooter. why the changes to the game format and further canning the project? To which Bob answered, "I don't remember, I'm getting old." Ross Silverman also asked, "It's been claimed that when SDI was in process of being ported to another format, its release was delayed as the company had asked programmers to add extra features and such needed extra time. Is this claim true? If so, which format was it and what extra features did you ask for and why?" Bob answered, "The port referred to had to have been the C64. It was never completed, not because we asked for the features, but because the programmer was not up to the task. He later became quite good." Now personally, I think this game would have done just fine with the public. It really reminds me of the SNES Jurassic Park and Zombies Ate My Neighbors game. And the mechanics that were implemented in the game I think were very cool for the time. Now another thing that I thought was pretty cool was that a motion picture was actually made of this game recently, last year in fact. Now while I haven't heard much about this film, I'm pretty sure it sucks. But it's still pretty cool to know that a movie was actually made about this obscure game. And that is what we know from It Came From the Desert. Thank you guys for watching. Check out some of our other videos if you like. Check out our Facebook. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, give us any suggestions for any future videos, and check out our Patreon as well if you'd like. All the links are in the description below. And I'll catch you all next time.